Hi there, and thanks for joining me today. My name is Adam, and this instructional video is a companion to my shopping tote cut and sew pattern on spoon flower. When you buy this item, you'll receive 1 yard of fabric with my design and the cutting pattern printed directly on it. There's a link to purchase it in the description below. When your fabric arrives, there's a note from spoon flower to wash and dry your fabric first. So that's what I'm going to do. When you open up your fabric, you'll notice lots of folds, and it's important to iron these out so they don't affect the accuracy of your cutting. In addition to the 1 yard of fabric required to make this bag, you'll also need coordinating thread. There are 2 places where we'll top stitch, so it's up to you if you'd like to match those colors or contrast them. I prefer to contrast, so I'm using a medium gray for my thread. Printed on the fabric are instructions on how to make the bag. At the top, there are a few notes, including a 3/8 seam allowance unless otherwise directed. Second, extend the cut lines all the way through the selvages. This allows us to take advantage of that extra fabric so the handles of the bag are as long as possible. Now let's look at the key. A is the pocket. B is the pocket placement. C is the side of the bag. D is the bottom fold of the bag. E is the box bottom. There are 4 of these. F is the top of the bag and the sides of the handles. G is the interior piece, and H is the exterior. All of the cut lines are indicated by the dashed line. I like to use a rotary blade for the straight edges and scissors for the curves and inside corners, but please use whatever method you prefer. Step 1 is to cut out all the pieces, and I'm going to start by cutting out the F line around the directions so I can keep these handy for the rest of the project. I also do the same to detach the pocket. There's 4 large curved pieces that are essentially waste scraps, but I suggest you hold on to these. They could be sewn together to make additional pockets if you want. This is one of the boxed bottoms. And now I'll separate the interior and exterior. I use a rotary blade, rotary mat, and long quilting ruler. I also use the rotary blade for the other sides of the bag. And finally, I'll trim the scraps away from the pocket piece. Note that I'm not trimming off the selvage in this step. With step 2, we're ready to sew the pocket. Fold the pocket in half with right sides together, aligning the short edges, and press. Step 3, sew the 2 cut edges, leaving the selvage open. Start at one end, pivot with the needle down, and continue to the other end. Trim the corner to reduce bulk without cutting into the seam. Now you can turn the pocket right side out using a point turner to poke out the corner. I use a large artist's brush as it is long and has a blunt point. Press the pocket flat. The top of the pocket is the folded, not sewn, side. Step 4, place the interior piece on your work table right side up and find the letter B. This is where the pocket is placed. Make sure the top of the pocket, the fold, is facing towards the top of the bag. You can align the white excess of the pocket with the side of the bag as I am doing, or if you want a slightly larger pocket and you'd like a nice crisp white stripe along the pocket, you can align the side with the selvage. Pin the pocket in place. Step 5. Top stitch the pocket onto the bag along the bottom and side of the pocket. No need to sew the side along the selvage, as that will be taken care of in the next step. Be sure to backstitch a couple of times at the top, as this will get a lot of wear. Step 6. Fold the interior piece right sides together, aligning the sides and curves and box bottoms. You can also trim off the excess of the pocket. Step 7. Pin along the sides. We'll sew these two sides, but not the box bottom or the curved tops. Those come later. Be sure to backstitch at the beginning and end of this seam. A note about alignment. As this is a cut and sew pattern printed on fabric, the alignment of the printing can shift a bit as we are washing, drying, pressing, cutting, pinning, etc. I've built into this project a bit of wiggle room to compensate, so don't worry if all the edges don't line up at the same time. Prioritize the step that you are working on, knowing that you align the other components later. For instance, in this step, I notice that when I perfectly match up the sides, the curves are slightly off from each other. That's okay. Those will be taken care of later. And after all, we're making a casual shopping tote, not a tailored tuxedo pant. Step 8 is the box bottom. Open up the box bottom and tuck your fingers into the inside corners and gently pull them apart. The bottom fold and side seam should now be aligned. Step 9. Pin this seam closed and sew across, back stitching on both ends. This seam should be folded over to one side. Next is the exterior of the bag. Repeat steps 6 through 9, folding the exterior in half, right sides together, aligning the sides. Pin and sew. Here is the process for the box bottom again. Pull the side corners apart, aligning the bottom fold and side seam. Pin the seam closed with the seam allowance to one side, and sew closed with a backstitch at the beginning and end. Step 11. Turn the exterior right side out and tuck it inside the interior. Right sides will be together. Note that one set of handles is slightly narrower than the other. Match the narrow handles and the wide handles to each other. Align the side seams and fold the seam allowances in opposite directions. Step 12. I recommend sewing each of the 4 curved bag tops and handle sides individually, starting at the side seams and working towards the tops of each handle. Start by pinning and sewing one of these, and then do each of them individually. Do not sew the tops of the handles closed. As I am sewing, I notice that the two fabric pieces have shifted. I remove the final pins and realign the two pieces as I'm sewing. I neglected to film this, but be sure to clip the curves. That is, make small cuts in the seam allowance perpendicular to the seam in the curved sections. Don't cut into the seam. Clipping the curve allows it to lay flatter when turned right side out. Step 13. Turn the entire project right side out through one of the handles. Take your time, we're almost done. Once it's right side out, tuck the interior into the exterior. Use your point turner to push out the corners of the exterior. Step 14. Press the handles and tuck the selvage on the wide handle into itself. Then tuck the end of the narrow handle into the wide handle. You can tuck this in as far as you'd like. This will adjust the overall length of the handle. Top stitch the handle closed in 2 lines, approximately 3/8 and 1/8 inch from the fold. I prefer to sew one seam with the presser foot on the machine aligned to the fold and the needle in the center position. And then move the needle to the right and sew a second seam, still with the presser foot aligned to the fold. Last but not least, give your bag a good press and you're done. I hope you've enjoyed making my bag and that this video was helpful. I'd love to see your makes, so if you're so inclined, please tag me if you post on Instagram @MaxandWolf. Thanks again for joining me today and take care.